Well, hello. Welcome to my first ever Ask Me Anything. I've never done one of these, but I thought it'd be kind of fun. Some of these questions that you guys have asked me are talking about brewing, and some are just about me, so I think it'll be kind of fun. This is the second channel, Man-Made Mead Extras. So if you want to see the extra content, stuff like this, that is not necessarily always brewing, feel free to subscribe. So I took to Instagram, Instagram stories, and the YouTube community page on the main channel and said, hey, what do you want to know? So I'm going to go ahead and share these with you. So we got our first one from Underwater Nomad. He asks, or she asks, have you tried using exotic fruits like mooseberry or buffalo berry? I have not, but those do sound really cool. I'd love to try something like that one day. I've never seen one of those before, so it's probably going to be a situation where I have to get it in an extract or something weird, probably not in an actual natural form. But it sounds fun. Underwater Nomad also asks, any timeline on when you'll make a coffee mead? So I made a coffee mead a number of years ago, and I did it 3 ways. I wasn't too pleased with it in the long run, and so I had made videos on it. I pulled those videos down because I want to make a better coffee mead. So that's going to require me to do some research on it, and I honestly haven't attempted one since then. It's on the list. It's not very high on the list, but it's on the list. Mountain Man in Midtown, I think that's what his name is, says, what inspired you to get into mead making? So when I first started looking into brewing, I'd done a couple beer batches with my brother, and I enjoyed it. And I wanted to make beer. And then I kind of looked up all the things I needed to make beer. And at the time, that was also like all the grains and all of the malts and all of the hops and stuff. And it was just a lot of ingredients. So I was looking for alternatives of things to brew. And I found mead, which at the time to me was only honey and water and yeast. Little did I know that there's a lot more that goes into good mead. But I started with that, and then I also started the channel in conjunction with my first mead I ever made. And I wanted to kind of document the process. So if you go back to the first videos on the channel from almost 5 years ago, those were my first meads I had ever made. So it's kind of fun to see the progression, especially looking back on it now. Lennon T. Albert says, can I ask you to send some meads? Send me some meads. Sorry, I unfortunately don't share my meads. I share them when I do tests and stuff sometimes. Like I do a lot of A/B tests, and every once in a while I'll share them that way. Or if I do a specific video, I share them with that. But I don't just share my individual meads. Mostly because that's a giant rabbit hole to where if I open the door once, then I feel like I have to open the door a lot. And I don't really... Maybe if I have a meadery one day, I will be able to do that. But not anytime soon. Kyle Bradley, 802, asks, what meads would you have on deck at your hypothetical meadery? Since we're on that note. So I have an apple cinnamon recipe that I really love, that I've got pretty well down. I have this new orange blossom, 5% orange blossom hydromel that is bomb, that I really, really like. Those are the 2 so far. I'm trying to think what else. I would probably have a blueberry and cinnamon, not on necessarily tap, but in bottles ready to go because it's not sparkling. If I had just magically, I would have my peppermint mead all the time because that peppermint mead is spectacular. I really like it. I'm trying to think some other ones. I've had some like really good ones. Strawberry and cinnamon turned out really good as well. I've had a pear mead. I experimented with a rum oak chips, pineapple, and maple syrup. That was a super interesting one, but it turned out good. Those are some options I would have. As far as taps are concerned, I have a bunch of things on tap at my house right now. I'll show you a picture of those. So it's pretty fun. Armando Loke, sorry if I butcher your names, says, what's the worst tasting mead you've ever made? I made a spearmint tea mead one time that just it went real south. It was super bad. I used too many tea bags, and it wasn't very good. Probably the worst. Or they're, if you watch the most recent episode of Palate Expanders, which is on the main channel, there is I called it the freezer dump mead. Is literally like all the frozen fruit and crap that was in my freezer, I basically put into a mead, and that one turned out really terrible. Ep Brecking says, do you think dehydrating fruit would create different ABV or flavor in a mead? I don't know if it'd be a different flavor. The only thing that would make me think it would be different is, one, you don't have juice content, which can sometimes obviously up the water content of something, but I wonder if there's more flavor in that juice than we give it credit. Also, if you have dried fruit that has sugar on it, like coated sugar, that's going to affect the flavor. I don't know. I kind of want to put that to the test. I'm going to start experimenting more with that in the future. LaHood says best juices / fruits / sweeteners for orange blossom mead. Oh man, that's a Pandora's box, because there's so many things that could pair well. I would say any bright fruit, apples, pears, even orange zest could be interesting. Lime zest, lemon zest. I've had great success with orange blossom honey and blueberries. I mean, strawberries. All of those fruits would go really well. Anything I feel like in a brighter fruit or mellow-ish. I don't know. That's a lot of fruits though. That is a giant box. If you have an opinion, leave it down below. Steve D12 asks, can a newbie make a mead that's not super sweet? Yeah, of course. If you feed your yeast properly and you don't have a stall on your hands, your yeast are more than likely, depending on your starting gravity, going to chew through a lot of the sugars. So if you make something that's, 1.100 and you give it a normal wine yeast, it's probably going to ferment dry. So that's not sweet. It sounds like to me, I'll say this, lots of newbies end up making sweet meads when they follow bad practice or old books that aren't updated, and they have a stall, and that causes their brew to end sweet when they didn't want it that sweet. So you can definitely make things dry with modern methods, following right practices. Dry stuff's possible. Christy Chrisward says keto mead, but seriously, I'd have to investigate. I don't know how to achieve it. I don't know. It's a thought though. LJR Food and Brews says, have you dumped any brews? Yes, I dumped that experiment batch, the experiment tea batch that I did. I dumped a strawberry batch one time. A lot of the time during my tests, when I do A/B tests and stuff, I don't always keep those, like my raisin experiment. I kept a couple bottles, but I honestly dumped probably 5 or 6 gallons of mead because it wasn't all that great, I'll say, and I had better things in the works. So yes, I've dumped things. Sometimes if it's terrible, sometimes if I just have excess and I don't want to bottle a million of something, I'll dump it. 8 Too Many Onions asks, I'm trying to get really good at dry traditionals like you, but I've done them around 10%. My guy says higher ABV since it has more honey. It means more volatile and aromatic compounds in the mead. Is this your experience? When I think volatile or like rough compounds, I think of like fusels, and fusels often are with non-clean fermentations. So could be your yeast, could be your nutrition, could be those things. I haven't had any real bad experience with super hot, or excuse me, like sulfury or bad compounds in my traditionals, but it's possible. Again, it's all about your process and your method. I have not had experience with that, but that's not to say it's not possible. I'm going to jump over to YouTube community people. From Paul Mahane, I don't know how you say that, sorry. In all of your mead making since you started and the hundreds of batches you've made, what % would you say were good bad and excellent, or bad, good, and excellent? Oh, great question. My ratio has changed a lot over time. I would say within the first 100 that I had done, I just logged 241, my batch 241. In the first 100, my ratios were probably like, I didn't have any that were just atrociously bad, I would say, but I still probably had, let's say 20 of the 100 were bad, 70 of the 100 were like, they were good, but not like they had some flaws. And then the excellent ones were probably like 10 in there. And those are like repeated batches. The 100 to 200 range, started to flip more. I had like 5 that were bad, super bad. I had quite a few in the middle ground of like, not super great, but pretty good. And then I had way more excellent. Since then, in the past 40, I've probably had 1 or 2 that were awful. And then, 5 to 10 that were just like, okay, good. But then like the last few have been great because I've learned how to balance my brews and that stuff. And that's not to toot my own horn, but that's saying that my progression as a mead maker, when I learned how to properly use acid and tannin and sweetness and consider my yeast choice with my, with my honey and pairing things, it's made my mead making so much better. Afro Thunder Music says, how did Nathan Zangmeister's traditional mead, which had no nutrients and was topped off with water, win first place at the Mazer Cup? He seemed to have a really relaxed approach to making mead. Did it sort of magically turn out to be good? I think that's the truth of it. I think he got really lucky with quality honey, a good yeast choice, and then honestly just luck. It just worked out really well for him. The way those yeast fermented is a little bit magical, I would say, because a lot of other people would try the same thing and it's not going to turn out very good. So I'm not condoning not using nutrients because I think using nutrients will actually confirm that your yeast do what they need and ferment cleanly. There's always a chance that things just magically work out, but I'd rather not risk it. When you're dealing with honey, there's no point in like saying, here you go, let fate decide what happens. You should have a little bit of a control of what's going to happen. The Silver Sasquatch asks, is it normal for a yeast that is supposed to ferment completely dry to stop with 10 to 12 gravity points left? Would the fact that I use cider yeast to ferment black cherry juice and honey cause this? Thanks for the great videos. So the first question I have to ask, and obviously you're not going to be able to answer this, but if your starting gravity is obviously higher than your yeast tolerance, then yes, you're more than likely going to have a fermentation that does not go through everything. So yes, that is a very normal thing. Now, let's say you're using that cider yeast that gets up to 8-9%, and your starting gravity is going to cap out, or is going to sit you at 8 or 9%. It's probably going to go dry, assuming that you've given it proper nutrients and done what you need to. Now, if it's an unhealthy fermentation, things kind of happen. You're going to have some off flavors, and you're probably going to have a stuck or stalled fermentation, which some people are going to look at those things, the failure of a fermentation, and go, now I don't have to back sweeten, which is fine. But you've stressed your yeast out, so you have trade-offs. So it happens, yes. It really depends on your starting gravity. It sounds like you had a high enough starting gravity to cap out your yeast and leave some residual sugar. Pokemon myself asks, pros and cons of different types of clearing agents. I use bentonite at the end of every mead I do. I'm curious if stuff like chitosane and kisosol would be better or not. I've done a clearing test. I didn't notice any distinct differences between the tastings of them. I personally really like chisosol and chitosane. So you can get it in the form of dual fine, like this package right here. And this is for 5 or 6 gallons. Now you can also get it, for me, I use it in a large form. I spent like 20 bucks, 30 bucks on both of these, but this is enough to clear like 200 gallons of mead or more. So you just have to use the right dosage, which is a very, very small amount. And I mean, this is the Kisosol, this is chitosan. I don't know about comparatively to bentonite and those things. I would say that any clearing agent is going to be more helpful to help clear things than just letting it set for time. Basil Hallward asks, not brewing related, but it's an AMA after all. What pets do you have and what are their names? I've seen a dog and a cat on camera before and I've always wondered. I used to have a cat. His name was Gavin and he's still alive. I had him at a time when I had a roommate who, whenever he moved, him and the cat bonded really well. And I just got a dog, which I'll talk about in a second, but I just got a dog and my wife was moving in, so I gave him the cat. He took Gavin with him, and I have a dog named Boone, which I'll show you a picture of. He's a Labradoodle. He's about 1 year and 7 months old. So both we're fun animals. I miss having a cat sometimes, but having a dog is really nice. Zeno3693 asks, ever want to try a side series like flavored sake, or better yet, why Mead in the first place? Well, hold on. First question. I definitely think it'd be interesting to get in the sake realm. I've never done it before, so it'd be fun to experiment. I don't know that I have the experience to teach people at this point. A lot of people watch my content and they're learning something from it, so I'd be afraid to post something when I have zero experience with it, so I need to play with it a little bit, but it could be fun. Why mead in the first place? Because mead is, a lot of fun. I really enjoy making mead. I like making beer too, but mead is more simple. I've gotten good at it, and obviously my shtick is man-made mead, so I kind of have to keep going with that. Faywood Mead asks, do you have any other hobbies besides brewing and playing instruments? I'm a big project person, so I do a lot of musical side projects. I play music just for fun and play in my church band and do all those things, but I also do like solo music. Like I have some of the music you hear in my videos is my own music, which is kind of fun. And then I also do like bigger projects kind of like this. Where I'm playing more instruments and doing stuff like that. Those are kind of my big things. Other than that, I run. That's kind of my other hobby. That's pretty much all I do. I occupy myself a lot. I'm on summer break right now, and I have yet to have a day where I've just done nothing because I continue to occupy myself. Kyle Ducharme says, what is on top of your mead making bucket list? Special types of mead, have to make, competition success. Definitely like, I've entered more competitions recently, so I want to hopefully do well in a competition. That would be nice, of course. As far as special types of mead, I just have little projects that would be interesting. Stuff like, I really want to try and make a solid a s'mores mead, and I want to do it in a couple manners. I want to do it like, just kind of go the easy route and get the amaretti flavorings, but then I also want to do it in a natural component. And use like meadow foam honey and stuff like that. Little projects like that are fun. I'm still trying to master a 5% ABV mead. I think it'd be a lot of fun to get that down, but it's going to take time because they're hard. Lower ABV stuff is hard to master. And last but not least, Laura Riggs says, is it really necessary to do the nutrient thing? Yes, and here's why. Your yeast are living organisms that need help. You need to have nutrients included in your brew in some form or fashion. When you're dealing with honey specifically, even sometimes in the fruit realm, you're dealing with low levels of nitrogen, microorganic nutrients, stuff like that that the yeast really need to ferment well. When they don't have those things, they put off flavors or fusels, and they get stressed, and they just make your mead not as great. Nutrients are really easy to buy. You can buy Fermaid O, Fermaid K for really cheap, honestly. I've had this same container of Fermate O for almost a year now, and it's a pound. It was like 20 bucks. I'm about to burn through it eventually, but all of my fermentations are clean because of my nutrients. If you're doing something like beer oriented, like a braggot that has malt, you're probably going to need less nutrients added to it, but nutrients are necessary. I mean, I view it in the same manner that, like, I could flip the question around on anybody and say, well, do you really need to eat? And the truth is, you could survive for quite some time without eating. You would be fine for, I think it's like, is it 40 days? Something like that. You can survive fasting, not eating. But at some point, when your body has ran out of all of its possible nutrients that it had in there, you're gonna start to not be so alive. And the same thing goes for yeast. They're gonna start freaking out, not gonna ferment cleanly. It's just not worth it to risk it. So go get some nutrients and just give your yeast what they need. I think you'll be happier in the long run. So this has been my first ever AMA, Ask Me Anything. I would love to know if you have more questions for me. More than likely, I'll do another one of these in the future, but this is fun. I want you guys to know me not just for my brewing, but me as a person, and hopefully this is your opportunity to ask me things. Of course, I'll answer things up to a point where I feel like it becomes an invasion of my privacy, so feel free to ask away and I'll answer if I feel comfortable. So thank you for watching. This is, again, the second channel, Extras channel. Feel free to hit subscribe. I am going to start posting a little bit more here with random stuff like this. And then, of course, the main channel, if you aren't currently subscribed to the main channel. So thank you for watching, and cheers.